Hi, Allison. Welcome.
I apologize. The link that you sent me kept asking me to sign into my San Jose State Zoom, and I don't have San Jose State Zoom, so I had to come in for via your general invite link. So I apologize about that.
Oh, no problem. As long as you don't need to share a screen, that's fine.
I think Carrie has my slides, so.
Yes. Okay. We are having our guests joining us. So in 2 minutes, I'll start with the introduction. Numbers is going up, and we'll take few minutes to take time to have most of our guests joining our program. Okay. Okay. On behalf of the Department of Urban and Regional Planning, Spatial Analytics and Visualization Institute in San Jose State University, and our partners for this event, I would welcome you to GIS Day 2021. Share my screen as well. Today, we are very grateful to have partners from public and private industries involved in both educational and professional activities who are joining to share their depth of knowledge as panelists or workshop instructors today. The Spatial Analytics and Visualization Institute, in short, SAVi at SJSU, uses the power of geography and GIS to produce impactful research and professional services in collaboration with our colleagues in SJSU or other university departments, neighborhood organizations, public agencies, and private sector entities in Silicon Valley and the Bay Area, as well as facilitating knowledge exchanges in GIS science by organizing public events, bringing together scholars and professionals with unique expertise to present cutting-edge research findings and hosting educational workshop on technological advances in spatial analytics and visualization. Now, while we gather here, I would like to recognize the importance of the Mubek-Moholan tribe, where San Jose State is established on, and our significance and importance continues to be of this tribe. And after the fact that San Jose State is expanding, there are basically more details and importance in the land acknowledgement that I put on the slides to recognize the basically land that we are locating on. Our program today is basically filled with panel talk, with workshops, with information sessions. I would like to remind everybody that if there is any question, technical part, feel free to put it in the chat box. The hosts here are here to help you. Once get to the panel section, we are kindly asking you to post your questions in Q&A that we could basically get to those questions one by one. We will remind that on that part too. For the folks who are not from San Jose State University, we have 5 Esri licenses that we're going to give out at the end of our event. And also we will have a competition, a quiz at the end, very basically entertaining and fun. So stay tuned with us until the end of the program when we launch the quiz, and then we have an award to give for the winner. So without further ado, let me introduce our keynote speaker. Dr. Mohamed Abousalem is the inaugural Vice President for Research and Innovation at San Jose State University and the President of the Board of Directors at SJSU Research Foundation. Dr. Abousalem is leading the creation of productive relationships and developing and implementing strategies that increase SJSU competitiveness and expands its external funding opportunities. He is also building the institutional innovation support infrastructure to facilitate the offering and coordination of entrepreneurship support services that enable San Jose State faculty and students bring their inventions, ideas, and methodologies to practice for the benefit of the local and global community. Dr. Abousalem has over 30 years of technical business administrative management experience, including several executive management roles in industry, as well as innovation and entrepreneurship support leadership position in the nonprofit sector and academia. Dr. Abousalem received his Bachelor of Science in Civil Engineering from Alexandria University in Egypt, Master of Science and PhD in Geomatics Engineering from University of Calgary, Canada, and MBA from Santa Clara University. Without further ado, let me invite Dr. Abousalem for the opening remarks.
Thank you, Dr. Zanja Tashbar, and welcome and good evening, everyone. It is my pleasure to welcome you to the GIS Day 2021, hosted by the San Jose State University Spatial Analytics and Visualization Institute. We are very grateful to the event organizers who have put on this forum in this flexible virtual format. It is exciting to see such a great level of interest in this event from GIS practitioners, urban planning professionals, geographers, engineers, scientists, business leaders, students, and enthusiasts to connect with and listen to the specialists and leaders from academia, government, and industry. We are also very grateful to the event sponsors and supporters who made it possible. I hope you take the time to meet with them today and in the future and learn about their outstanding contributions to this field. So in preparation for my talk, I came across an article written by Steve Snow at ESRI, a great article. He opens it by saying that we are now living in an age where technology is the backbone of successful mapping organizations. By embracing technology, all parts of the workplace have become more productive. I would like to repurpose this opening statement and say it in a little different way. And that is, we are now living in an age where mapping is the backbone of successful technology-based organizations. By embracing mapping, businesses have become more productive. Mapping has indeed become the key ingredient for many businesses. Without mapping, the business model does not stand for many enterprises, even if their primary business is not location-driven. And of course, technology is an enabler that has been taking different forms, and now more so in the form of video graphics and artificial intelligence. I know that I'm probably biased about placing mapping in the center of the value proposition of a business, which is probably because of my technical background being positioning and navigation. My research and development work back when I was a practicing engineer was in GPS, which, as you all know, goes hand in hand with GIS. GPS has been a great enabling technology for GIS and mapping. In any case, I'm sure that I'm among friends here today and you will support my bias for positioning, navigation, mapping, and GIS, right? I hope so. So the focus of this GIS Day is the intersection of GIS and technology, the topic of the times, of course. According to McKinsey and Company, artificial intelligence remains among the top 10 technologies with momentum and real impetus, as in attracting the most venture money and patent filings with big implications for businesses. So coupling AI with the power of mapping, or better yet, coupling AI with technology-powered mapping, or GIS, is the way to go. AI brings other dimensions to GIS. It brings the time and space dimensions to the knowledge and opportunities afforded to us by GIS. It's all about making the vast wealth of data work for us in ways we have not imagined or were not able to before. We all know that creating detailed maps is an expensive and time-consuming process. And because of this, some geographies around the world don't get the same attention as others. It all comes down to cost and investment. Now think of the opportunity we have from data-rich satellite imagery, and not only still imagery or snapshot imagery, but dynamic imagery over time. The data is so rich that it adds direct value to the GIS in the form of features that are in fact present, but also the opportunity to predict or model features that are not present, not visible, or otherwise not accessible. So with satellite imagery and time and space modeling techniques, we can enrich our maps without having to drive these roads. This is just a basic example of how AI can enable and expand the value of GIS farther in our world. Now, the value of all this data and spatial information is only realized when it is visually manipulated to the fullest extent. Not only do we need maps to be visually compelling, we need them to be easily manipulated for a wide variety of applications, audiences, and locales. So while the scale of the map has been traditionally a critical visualization aspect, and that's because larger scale maps display smaller areas with a greater amount of detail, now we know that scale is not the only visualization tool. There are many visualization options and techniques that help promote the value of a GIS. For example, choropleth maps, heat maps, dot maps, cluster maps, etc., etc. I'm sure a lot of other technologies and techniques will be on display and will be discussed here today. So to that end, I encourage you to take advantage of the learning opportunity at this GIS Day from the rich display of knowledge, expertise, and most importantly, the opportunity for collaboration across the board. I invite you to use this forum not only to learn, but also to connect with your colleagues in these leading geospatial areas. I invite you to take the time to learn about the unique opportunities afforded to us by the intersection of GIS with artificial intelligence and visualization technologies, from smart cities to public health management, from autonomous vehicles to wildfire management, and many other critical fields. This disciplinary intersection has a great impact and brings real innovations to our communities. And as you learn and embrace these future technologies, and as you connect and partner in your areas of interest, know this: the human capital is at the core of your success. Build your partnerships, your workforce, and your future on the human skills you will need to thrive. These necessary human skills are not limited to the technical skills we tend to focus on sometimes. These skills include leadership and management, critical thinking and decision-making, project management, empathy, and interpersonal skills, to mention a few. To really make a difference and have an impact as technology, academic, and business leaders, you need to deliberately factor the human capital parameter into your success equation. That's how you will truly thrive and how you will make an impact. Now, speaking of impact, I'd like to take this opportunity to note that public impact is the primary goal for the San Jose State University Research Enterprise, and I'm pleased to see several of our faculty members participating today. At San Jose State, we focus on bringing real value to our local and global communities while providing our students with experiential learning opportunities. These experiential learning opportunities help our students to develop the critical thinking and analytical skills they need to become successful employees, entrepreneurs, and thought leaders. No wonder San Jose State University is ranked the #1 most transformative university in the nation. Through the great research work that our faculty and students do, we are able to contribute to solving today's problems and mitigating tomorrow's challenges alongside our industry, government, and community partners. This GIS Day is a testament to our ability as the public University of Silicon Valley to convene the research and development community around important topics that touch our lives to build a solid future for our students. Well, I don't want to take too much of your time. We need to get you started with this great program. So thank you for being with us today, and a very warm welcome to each and every one of you. Have a great GIS Day.
Thank you very much, Dr. Abousalem. And you spoke about very important factors in GIS science, the fact that the richness of data sets that we have would allow us to basically move from what we know to what we don't know through modeling. And you named examples of career trajectories that we could have by knowing GIS, by getting involved in GIS. And I think this is a perfect bridge to our panel. The panelists who want now to talk about different career trajectories that we could have by having the knowledge on GISci and geoartificial intelligence. We are very delighted to join by three great panelists to further opening remarks of Dr. Abousalem. We have Dr. Lynn Usery. Dr. Usery is a senior scientist with the U.S. Geological Survey, USGC, and director of the Center of Excellence for Geospatial Information Science. He worked as a cartographer and geographer for the USGS for 33 years and a professor of geography for 17 years with the University of Wisconsin-Madison and University of Georgia. He served as president of the University Consortium for Geographic Information Science. I bet many of you would know that organization, UCGIS, the Cartography and Geographic Information Science, CAGIS, many of you would know that as well, and the American Society for Photogrammetry and Remote Sensing. He is a fellow of CAGIS, UCGIS, and ACPRS, and received the CAGIS Distinguished Career Award in 2012. He served as Vice President of International Cartographic Association from 2015 to 2019, and he is the chair of the ICA Commission on Map Projection from 2019 until 2023. His primary research areas are in theoretical cartography and geographic information science, map projection, geospatial semantic and ontology, high-performance computing, CyberGIS, spatial data models, and data integration. We also have Dr. Sarah Battersby, who is a principal research scientist at the Tableau research team. Dr. Battersby's primary area of focus is cartography with an emphasis on cognition. Her work emphasizes how to help everyone visualize and use spatial information more effectively, regardless of the advanced degree whether the person has in geospatial science or not. Dr. Battersby holds a PhD in geoscience from University of California in Santa Barbara, and she is the member of International Cartography Association Commission on Map Projection and is a past president of Cartography and Geographic Information Science, CAGIS. And last but not the least, Dr. Laxmi Subramanian is professor and chair of the Department of Urban and Regional Planning and co-director of Spatial Analytics and Visualization Institute at San Jose State University. Her research examines the complexity of planning with advanced digital technology, as well as community resilience in the wake of large-scale social ecological disruptions that we are experiencing. She has published 2 books, several peer-reviewed publications, and has presented her work at national and international conferences. Dr. Ramasubramanian holds a doctoral degree from University of Wisconsin-Milwaukee and Master of City and Regional Planning degree from Massachusetts Institute of Technology. And she is the president of the Association of Collegiate Schools of Planning, which I guess started very recently. So congratulations on that as well, Dr. Ramasubramanian. Without further ado, let me hand it to Dr. Ramasubramanian with the note that Dr. Usery, for the security reasons, he will be participating with voice. His video would be off, which is fine. We want to hear him as well. Dr. Ramasubramanian.
Thank you, Ahura, and thank you, Dr. Abousalem, for your very informative and engaging remarks. As Ahura said, I think this transition is going to be a nice good transition. It's my pleasure to be able to facilitate a conversation with two of my colleagues who I've known for a number of years. You heard their bios, so I'm not going to expand on them. But I thought that we would begin today by taking a little bit of time to ask Dr. Usery and Dr. Battersby to take turns to speak a little bit about their own career trajectories in the field, like how they started and how where they're at now, and just the arc, right? So that our students in the audience can think about the various possibilities that are afforded when you have this specialization as part of your tool set, right, of your infrastructure. So with that, and I've requested Lynn to go first and then to hand it over to Sarah, and then we'll maybe continue the dialogue from there. Lynn?
Thank you, Laxmi. I appreciate the opportunity, and I have to be enthusiastic about this field because I have spent my entire career in it. And I began as a cartographer when I first graduated university, and I went to work for the U.S. Geological Survey as a cartographer. But I was interested in research, so I had to go back for my PhD. And when I got that, I returned work for USGS for a while, and then I wanted to get more research oriented, and I wanted to participate in the academic environment. So I actually left the U.S. Geological Survey and went to the University of Wisconsin-Madison, where I was on the faculty there for a number of years. And then I moved to the University of Georgia. But I returned to the USGS because I liked the government research environment that I had worked in, and there were opportunities to help rebuild a research program. So I've kind of watched the field from cartography as a fledgling digital discipline in the 70s grow into this industry that now is GIS science that powers so many new applications and industries all built around it. But I did move back and forth between the government and the academic environment during that time. But GIS science has been, I'll turn that a little bit more to the kind of where I see things and how they are. GIS science is still a rapid growth industry, and all the different kinds of careers in it span the things from producing data to working with IT and distribution of data to applications in the environment and government in a plethora of areas that have just sprung up as a result of this. And the technology now has gotten to the point, as Dr. Abousalem mentioned, that the applications all are centered around mapping, and they have spawned new industries. And I'll just give a couple of examples. I mean, all the mapping applications that we use from Google and Microsoft and Apple and others to navigate around are all built in the GIS and GPS industries, and it's all come about. And then as a result of that, there are all these new business models. Things like Uber could not exist without this technology. And it continues. And kind of where this is going is now we're in the era of big data, where we have so much data. In the beginnings of the GIS industry, one of the things we didn't have was data, and it took a long time to build the data. Now we have more data than we can process, so we're having to move to things like GeoAI to be able to handle and process these data. We're working with terabytes of information now and verging on petabytes of information that we have to process. And we really are using this, and this is geographic information that I'm talking about. But the technology is there to do this. But what's not there are all the people that we need to actually make it work. We've been struggling now for almost 2 years trying to hire some people in GeoAI to help us with our programs in USGS. So the career opportunities, I think, are really here in this whole new expanding environment. And the applications really, they abound in all different areas: environment, agriculture, government, planning, exploration, transportation. All of these things are building on this technology and using it now. So I'll turn now just very quickly to some examples of careers within the USGS that people have. Those people that actually work strictly in GIS with our mapping and things carry titles of cartographer, geographer, physical scientist, or computer scientist usually. This group includes, data production, quality control specialists, data management, delivery applications research, new map design, development information technology and geoscience, research, both basic and applied, and GeoAI and cyber infrastructure are really the current focus of the new research and what's driving all of our production of all the terabytes and petabytes of data that we make available to the public. In the broader application of GIS, our USGS employees include people like hydrologists and geologists and ecosystems analysts and many other application areas. But they're all using this GIS technology, and a lot of them are adopting GeoAI. So I'll kind of conclude, it's a great time, I think, to join the field of GIS science. The future is bright with a growth at a very high level for any industry today. Career opportunities are great in government, academia, and industry. And as I mentioned, we have trouble hiring enough people right now in the government sector for this work. And the industry growth rate is going to continue, and it's going to be fueled by all the industry growth that's out there, this whole field is. So I'll stop with that.
Thank you, Lynn. We may come back because you kind of, it's like receiving information from a fire hose, like there's lots of information that you shared. So we might circle back to unpackage some of that. But before we do that, let me hand it off to Sarah, and maybe you can give the counterpoint or add to what Lynn said.
Yeah, I mean, I'd actually just like to listen to Lynn talk about this for another, half hour or so. But I could talk a little bit about sort of my trajectory and what I've learned along the way that I think would be sort of interesting and relevant, and plays off of a number of the comments that Lynn made. I sort of became an accidental geographer. When I was an undergraduate, I never declared geography as a major, but I have 3 degrees in geography. And I like to sort of taunt my old home department because I never actually finished the admissions requirements for the major. Through some university glitch or something, I was declared a geography major, and I didn't realize I could just change it. And so I saw that I'm a geography major and I have to take this cartography class within 2 quarters of being accepted to the major. And so I took it, and I was terrified. I thought the professor was crazy. I didn't understand anything he was saying. And I told my TA, I'm going to drop the class. I don't get it. My TA said, stay in the class. And I did. And it started to make a lot of sense to me. And that was sort of this big turning point, because I became a geographer at that point. And I realized that there was this really, really powerful set of data and this really, really powerful set of tools. And you could do so much with it. And it really was the underpinning of so many questions that we had to deal with, everything from environmental science, geology, urban planning, pretty much everything I could think of had this geospatial question underneath it. And I just thought, this is so amazing and powerful. And then I took a class on map sources and errors. And I started thinking about all of the ways that spatial data is really hard for people and really difficult to wrap your head around, the way that the data works and the way that the tools work, and how to use it for good. Because there are a lot of ways that you can intentionally and unintentionally mislead people with spatial data. And I think to get at a point that Lynn made, where he said, there's more data than we can process. I think this is just this amazing time, because not only are we at a point where there's more data than we can process, we're also in this really interesting era where the geospatial has just sort of become like ubiquitous and invisible. We have this expectation of the spatial data, but we don't always think about the fact that what we're doing is specifically spatial. And so when you think about the fact that there are a lot of ways to unintentionally do really bad things with the data, or to misunderstand some of the quality issues, the positional accuracy, the attribute accuracy that come with spatial data, it's really just sort of this amazing amazing time where we need a lot of really critical thinkers about spatial data. And that's really what started me on my path. I got really scared about how people could tell lies with spatial data. And when I finished my undergraduate work, I thought, I'm not ready to just jump into a job where I'm working with data because I really want to understand these problems more. I found out there were these jobs that I called like the jobs in the basement. And I just wanted to go and process data and get waist deep in it and understand it. And I did some graduate degrees to really shape my career and become engaged in research that focused on how do people understand data? How do people understand processing? How do we communicate or miscommunicate? And so along the way, those are the things that I've really focused on picking up those skills. And I think we'll have time to hopefully talk about some of that more when we move on to some of the other questions in the session, but I'll go ahead and just sort of stop there.
Thank you, Sarah. So, I mean, it's really, we have a robust audience of students, so I think they really will appreciate the transition from being an undergraduate student to a graduate student, and then, finding the career that, at least a starting point. But to both of you, to Lynn and to Sarah, you both started off in academia, and then one of you went to government and one of you went to industry, and yet you carry this deep love of learning and research, and that hasn't gone away. But I'm just curious if you could talk to how is research. We know how research is at the university, at least the people in this, the panelists know that, and maybe the students know that too. But how is research, the enterprise, how is it different in industry and government, or is it? I mean, can you speak a little bit about what's involved?
I'll go ahead and just sort of lead on that because I'm on a research team. And I've spent time as a faculty member at a university doing, kind of the traditional academic research. And I find that at least in the role that I'm in, the big difference is what is the application? I mean, to me, what is doing research, whether you're at a university or industry or government, it's about wanting to figure out the problem. It's understanding what we've done, what we've tried. How do we make something better? How do we make something faster? How do we explore these new technologies to do good with them? And so I've done this transition moving into industry where how do I do things better? How do I make things better? Is really all about how do I help a large audience of people understand spatial better? How do we solve the problems of some of the data quality issues that make spatial accessible across the board? So in that sense, I'm doing a lot of similar types of work that I would do in an academic research, but the application area is different. Thank you.
So this is Lynn. I'll follow that. It's similar. I move back and forth between research in the university environment and research in USGS. And the way I would phrase it, I think it's the same thing Sarah was saying, that in the government environment, we're mission driven. We have a mission for USGS, and what research we do somehow has to fit into that mission. It can be pretty broad, and our mission is pretty broad, but the research itself is not what we would call curiosity-driven research the way you can do in an academic environment. But other than that, it's very similar. I approach the research the same way. We have the same kind of process for people to advance through our research programs that they have in government and academics. All of those are similar. But it's the fact that our research is a little more mission driven. It has to fit into an overall scope of what the mission of the organization is about.
Thank you. I'd like to now move along to and I think students can sort of get your questions queued up, and we'll take them after we finish this discussion. But maybe let's talk a little bit, which you already alluded to, like how our field has changed and how far it's come. And part of what I wonder now is really how do sort of GI science folks position themselves vis-a-vis working in partnership with computer scientists, with engineers, with other technologies, with natural language processing specialists, because the field itself has grown so much. And right now, geography is central and important, but it feels like geographers need to now learn CS and learn other things. And so as the field is changing, I'm just curious, because we're going to talk about curriculum in a little while. We're going to talk about, these things. Can you talk a little bit about, like, help us wrap our arms around GeoAI beyond the keywords, right? Like, what is at the heart of what we should be doing to better connect with this change? Lynn or Sarah, either one of you.
Oh, I would suggest that, you've kind of hit upon a central point as to how the field has expanded and encompasses all these different areas. I probably shouldn't look back historically, but I look back historically, and we were hiring people in the early years of GIS. We found out that, we wanted the geography people because they had the spatial knowledge and stuff, but we also wanted the computer science aspects because it was all turning to programming at that time even. And we wound up hiring geographers and training them in computer science, and sometimes the other way around. We could hire computer scientists and we could train them in geography. I think now what we're seeing with AI and cyber infrastructure and all distributed computing and things like that, it's the same kind of thing. We still need those people with the geography skills because that's central to the spatial problem. But at the same time, they probably need some training in some of these computer science areas like GeoAI. And I mentioned before, we're having trouble hiring those people because it's hard to find them. The universities now are starting to turn out more people with that kind of experience. But combining those things, having the spatial background, which I think is critical, but also combining it with other training that would involve you with the IT side of it, or the computer science side, probably is critical for a lot of new career specialists.
Yeah, I've found, in my experience, a lot of it is really getting to the point where you can be sufficiently conversational in these other fields that overlap without having to necessarily be fluent. I think that if we could identify somebody who had deep geospatial knowledge, deep computer science knowledge, deep knowledge of natural language processing, Lynn would have hired them as fast as he possibly could have. But I think that the people who, there really isn't anybody who can have that depth in all of those fields. And so it's really having this curiosity and this interest and willingness to be part of these cross-disciplinary groups where you can respect the perspective of the person who's coming in with domain knowledge in this area that complements what your domain knowledge is, and being willing to learn and flexible enough to learn enough so that you can really have these productive relationships. I know Lynn mentioned you find a great geographer and you can train computer science. You find the great computer scientist and you can train geospatial. And you put those two people together and you get a different depth of information, a different depth of knowledge. I mean, every day I work with people who have doctorates in computer science, who specialize in natural language, who specialize in statistics and machine learning. And they speak enough geography that we get along really well. And when I say something like, hey, modifiable aerial unit problem, they're not like, these are words I've never heard put together in a phrase before. But they may not really understand the depth of what that means when you're thinking about analysis. And they say things to me like, we need to optimize this algorithm, and I'm thinking about doing X, Y, and Z. And I can say, yes, I think that sounds reasonable. I have no clue how to do it, but I don't think that it will cause any problems with the spatial data. It's really getting to that level of fluency where you can understand why these other fields have such a strong relationship to the work that you're doing. And that's, I think, where we're really trying to get to with any of these advances in technology, because there's so much domain expertise that comes to doing the work right. And right is really what we're targeting, not just we did it, we made a model, it was fast, it was good, but we did it, we made a model, and we have enough expertise to explain to you why this model is probably good enough for you to really make a decision on and trust that decision.
I really appreciate this discussion, and I have one sort of last set of questions for us to discuss before I hand it off to my colleagues. We're in a Department of Urban and Regional Planning. And as you know, GI science finds its home in different places, geography departments, engineering departments. Here, we're in urban regional planning, but our urban regional planning is a big tent. And some sections of our field are quite intimidated by the phrase GeoAI. And, because to those folks, it's about losing control, having a disconnect between humans and, there's a tension there, and I'm not explaining myself very well. But the point is that there's concerns about ethics, about privacy, about security. And I don't think we've found a good vocabulary or way to talk about these things, but they're important and they need to be talked about. So do either of you have any thoughts about how to facilitate better dialogues, like, where the power of GeoAI has to be balanced a little bit with some of those other challenges?
I'll just jump in with a quick comment. I mean, I think that the way that we talk about this is that we have to keep talking about it, and we have to really make sure that it is upfront and clear. What are the privacy issues? What are the locational, data collection issues? What are the ethical issues? And unless we keep exposing them and talking about them, I think that we're going to lose them. And that's going to be very scary. I don't think that there is an answer on what is the conversation we need to have, what is the documentation we need to be doing, what is the perfect model that will eliminate all of these problems. I think it's really that we have to have a lot of really challenging ethical conversations about what is appropriate and what models are doing and what the results mean.
Yeah, I would agree with what Sarah is saying, and I would phrase it that just the term GeoAI is frightening because people don't understand it. And what she said in terms of being able to talk about it and go through these issues, and if more people understand it better, it won't be a frightening term. It's kind of interesting. We went through a similar thing when we first started researching things in ontology, and nobody wanted to hear the word. They didn't know what it meant. They were scared of it. And it took us 10 years or more for our research before all of a sudden people finally accepted that and it wasn't a problem anymore. So I think right now we're having the kind of thing with GeoAI because people have these ideas about it. They don't understand it. They don't know what it means. They are worried about, artificial intelligence takeover and we lose control. But as we talk about it more and as we see the capabilities of this technology more, people will get that understanding.
I'll just want to respond really quickly. First of all, I find the word ontology still a little bit frightening, Lynn. But with GeoAI, I think we have an additional challenge where, not only is kind of the term a little mysterious and frightening to a lot of people, it's also just a term that people feel like they need to use. Because if you say AI, people think it's cutting edge and good. And the joke that I like to throw out at work is, well, just rub a little AI on it, your problem is solved. And I think that there's a real misunderstanding of what AI is in terms of how we go about working with any large volumes of data. And I really am not terrified of ontology, Lynn. I just thought I'd taunt you mildly.
Okay.
It's been so much fun, and we're sort of having this, we're just getting started, but I just wanted to make sure I gave time to my colleague, Carrie Rohrmeyer, who's going to help me manage some of the questions, and I'm sure my colleagues in the Zoom room have questions as well. So let me hand it off to Carrie.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much, Sarah and Lynn. That was wonderful discussion on a topic that I think is really at the forefront of GIS, and probably a lot of our students are really new to this concept, as in like this talk. So maybe you've already answered this. Apologies, my internet went out for just a few minutes there. Before we get to our first Q&A that's been submitted from one of our guests, and I strongly encourage anybody else who has a question, please submit them, whether it be in the chat or the Q&A, and we'll get them in front of the panel tonight. But can you give us some examples for those of us who are really new to this? How and what GeoAI can do to change our lives, how it can change decision making? What are some examples that we might not even realize that this technology can do for us? Anyone on the panel is welcome to answer.
Lynn, our implementation of GeoAI, we're using a lot of deep learning techniques. We're using it for feature extraction to identify features in geographic data. We're also trying to use it to help build the semantics around the data so the data is knowledgeable. We're building this concept of called an intelligent national map, which is using AI as a part of that as to how people will actually use the map. But initially, most of it that we've used is for feature extraction kinds of processes from large volumes of data and being able to identify the geographic features that we're trying to put on the maps and into our GIS databases.
And how about at Tableau?
So I'll admit, I don't actually do GeoAI work so much. I work with a number of people that work with, that incorporate AI and machine learning into models they're building. And so the types of things that we're doing primarily aren't specifically geospatial. The work that I'm most familiar with is the type of thing that Lynn spoke about, thinking about these large volume feature extractions or, processing spatial data to try and find patterns, movement patterns between individuals. When you think about large volumes of, say, cell phone pings, where everybody is. Can you make predictions of crowd problems or, just other challenges that are where that volume of data with all of the cell phone pings from all of the individuals are just too large to be able to deal with by hand.
Great. I think that really helps give us some ideas. One of the questions we received in the Q&A is, what's been the most challenging and most rewarding parts of working in GIS?
So I'll start with that just kind of as a personal, most challenging and most rewarding. And I think this will probably resonate with Lynn as well. I would say thinking about map projections and how people deal with map projections has really been one of the most rewarding things. And it's interesting, if you caught it in our bios, Lynn and I have both been involved with the International Cartographic Association's Commission on Map Projections. Lynn is currently the chair, and I've been a member, and I always enjoy when the commission gets together. And to me, it's really fascinating the perspectives that people take on this, because map projections underlie everything that we do with spatial data. And I've always focused on how people understand these transformations and how the transformations cause problems in the way that we interpret the data. And to me, that's been absolutely one of the most challenging aspects of my work because it's unavoidable, but it's also really rewarding because it's a way to help people understand what some of the problems are in the data and think about the world in entirely new ways just by thinking about the transformation.
Listen, Lynn, I guess one of the major challenges for me was upon my entry into the field was really trying to understand geography. And I didn't know what it was all about. It was, I didn't even realize geography could be a subject that you would study in college until I got there. But getting past that, the rewards that I have seen throughout this has been what's happened with this, with mapping and this technology and where it's gone and where it is now. And I have benefited from that my entire career about what's happened with this whole industry. So that was definitely the reward.
And how about we ask our moderator, how about Laxmi, do you want to share your challenges and rewards in your career thus far?
Oh, I wasn't expecting that. I think for me, trained in architecture and urban planning and discovering GIS has been the challenge, and the opportunity has been trying to sort of figure out how to have a conversation with technical experts and subject domain experts in different fields, right? And so that's been a lifelong process. And I think, I just think that they let me be president of the UC GIS. So I think I learned how to talk to them. So.
Excellent. So we have received one more question. Let's see, actually two at this point. Here's a fun question about classes. What class did you take in college that you found most useful but did not expect to use at the time you were taking it?
So I was a sampler of classes. I took a lot of classes that had nothing to do with requirements for my degree. I'll probably say the ones I stumbled into, I had a good friend who was a computer science major and suggested that I might like the Intro to C class. And I took it and I thought it was really fun, and never took another undergraduate programming class again, but it's paid a lot of dividends over the years. I took a SQL class as a night class one time. It was me and a bunch of 40-year-old database administrators from local government who were taking this extension class. And I was like, this is interesting. I'll never use it. I write SQL queries all the time now. In grad school, probably my number one class was bowling, and that was great. I still bowl now, and I would highly recommend it.
Well, I would have to pick out the cartography class because I did not anticipate that I would, and when I found it in the geography department as an undergraduate, and I took that cartography class, I didn't think I would ever do anything with it, but it turned out to be my career.
Well, that indeed has been rewarding. We have another question about kind of skills that you've picked up along the way, but what would you recommend to our graduates? Many of them are going to be getting a bachelor's degree this year, either in December or May, and we have a number of master's students who have joined us on the Zoom today. What sorts of soft skills are valuable in these fields?
Well, I'll just jump in again. Things that I find incredibly useful, especially for people who are coming in, in positions in junior roles, are being able to say, I don't know, and to ask questions, and being able to write a succinct memo. So, every week, even now in my career, I write a weekly status email, and being able to communicate to the people that I work with and work for in 3 or 4 lines, this is what I'm doing, and this is the important aspect of it, is huge, because I know that they're not going to read a half page or a page long. Here's what I'm doing and here's what my problems are. Being able to really synthesize and think about how you communicate with other people to meet their communication style is really huge.
Terry, I'd like to add to that, and I think one of the words that is very much used these days, which I think is a skill that our young generations need to start developing if they don't have it, it's the skill of inclusion. So, young graduates, as they need to be thinking how they would include their colleagues, their peers in their conversations, in their thoughts, in their analysis, in their assessment. And it really builds up on what Sarah said, which is, you don't know it all. There are other pieces with the other people. So train yourself to open up and listen to everybody to make sure that you get the value from everybody as you embark on your work, even if it's an individual contributor type of work and you're doing it by yourself. Input is very important, perspective is very important, and it's never complete when it's one-sided.
Wonderful advice. Thank you. That's such an important aspect that I really appreciate that added commentary. We only have one other question at this time, and I think it's been somewhat touched on, but clarification on what you think would be best to increase quality and communication between computer scientists and people who are either in GIS or in the non-computer science disciplines that are using these common softwares.
I think Sarah kind of hit this one earlier when she said that basically you get on a level where you can talk across these disciplines. You don't have to have the in-depth knowledge of everything, but you do want at least enough knowledge that you can talk about the problems and how things work. And I've seen that in our workforce that we have computer scientists, we have geographers, we have geologists, we have all kinds of different people. And the key to it is when they can actually have enough of a common background that they can really talk to each other and communicate the problems and what needs to be done.
Perfect. Thank you to our speakers on the panel this evening. It's been a wonderful and fascinating topic, and one we haven't covered in our SAVi series yet. So really appreciate it. I think we're closing in on time to move to our next workshop series. It's going to start with Dr. Bo Yang, who is a new assistant professor in the Department of Urban and Regional Planning. And his specialty is using UAS and drones in the field. So he's going to give us a workshop. And then just after that, we're going to have a different workshop from our speaker from Fehr Peers, and that will be introduced just after this next workshop. So we're changing formats. And again, if at any time you have questions, please submit it in the chat, and we'll make sure the speakers and presenters address those. So thanks again to our first panel session.
Thanks, Sarah Battersby, Lynn Usery, and Dr. Abousalem so much for your time here today.
Thank you.
Let me try to share my screen. Okay, can you see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, great. Yeah, so I'm happy to give the first workshop today for the GIS Day at SAVi, SJSU. So a little bit about myself is I'm newly joined the SJSU this year, and it's my really pleasure to work with my great colleagues and students. So before that, I have a background in mathematics and computer science. So for the previous question about the computer science different from GIS, I can say that I've been to, my bachelor is mathematics, my master is computer science, and now I'm doing GIS, and GIS is the best. Okay, so something about today's first workshop. We will talk the GIS for drones. So how to use the drone and GIS to do some amazing things. So today I will start with some background of the drones and also how drone technique has been used in GIS and mapping. Then I will demonstrate some example for using drone and GIS application. So this workshop is a mix of the presentation and the video tutorial. So I will insert some videos in the middle. So also after that, I will give more materials on that about this workshop, how to using the drone for the GIS and mapping. Okay, so let's start with GIS data. We know that right now the space-time GIS data has become more and more important in the GIS field and also the data collection field, all the kind of analysis which is related to the geographic locations. So we have different kinds of the data collection methods. Like previously, we have the in situ instruments, like our meteorology station, or we do the field sampling. It's all collect the point-like data. So when we want to generate a map or something, we do the interpolation. Later, with the remote sensing, satellite remote sensing technology developing, so we have the raster data, the satellite data, like the low orbit and high orbit data. We can get different like spatial resolution, but still they are quite coarse. Like it's usually a couple of meters or a couple of the kilometers. So we can just see like the rough points or the bigger structure, bigger objects on the Earth's surface. And recently, with the development of the drone technology and also the more important, the battery technology, because previously the drone mapping is mostly limited by the battery technology. You can only fly for a very short of the time, like 10 minutes. So can basically can only do a limited thing. But with the battery technology developed, the drone has been used more and more from the industry to the real application, including the GIS. So today we will introduce that what's the cutting edge of the drone usage for the GIS and mapping, and also relate to the environmental and the societal like applications. And feel free to jump in if any questions. Okay, so let's start with the drone platforms. We see that here we have all kinds of different drone, and basically like this one, the Phantom 4 is the most popular one. I think most of you have this kind of drone. And I have one here as well, if you can see. This is one of the Phantom 4 Pro, you can see. And this we usually call it quadcopter drone because we can see it has 4 kinds of the propellers. And basically these 4 propellers with motors, they cannot move, but there is a software which can control the all the 4 different speed of the motors, 4 different speed of the propellers, so it can fly into different directions. So this is a drone, and it has a gimbal and camera. So this one is basically used to capture the data. So this is a drone, and with the drone, we can see it. This one has a normal kind of the camera. Why we call it normal camera? Because it's as same as your phone camera. It captures what you can see using the human eyes. The human eye can see for, we call it the visible light. Basically, it's a combination from the RGB, red, green, blue. So it's a visible light. But in addition, for the GIS usage, there is kind of more kind of bands can be captured, like the ultra-wide, near infrared, it can all be captured. So this brings our second one is a sensor. Because when we use normally we use a drone, we shoot for video, we shoot for image, we shoot for the great view, landscape. We all use a normal image, but we can customize more kind of a different sensor on the drone. So here I have another one. You can see this one. We can see as same as on the figure. This is called the Fehr Series 3. So this is a multi-spectral camera, and here is a mount we 3D print this mount and mount it on this drone. You can see like this. So this drone can not only capture the normal RGB, like the image, or we call it data, but also can capture that more bands of data, like the near infrared and ultraviolet. So why we do this? That's because if we look at this kind of spectral, we can say here is we call it the visible band. This is why we call it a visible band, because it's corresponding to our human's eyesight. That means all the spectral within this band, 400 to 700 nanometer, that we can see by our human eyes. But beyond this range, like the ultraviolet and infrared, we cannot see. But it's still there, although we cannot see. So the more kind of the camera on the drone, we can capture a kind of wider bands, include more kind of bands here and here. And using this kind of more comprehensive measurements, we can make a better like the classification, and you can see something you never see previously. I will show some examples later, very soon. Okay, so we talk about the platform part and also the sensor part. So we customize the platform, customize sensor, and the other part of the drone is the software. Because the software, because the drone is unlike the satellite remote sensing. For the satellite remote sensing, when you download the data from like Usgs or like NASA, they already process the data. The data you download is already processed. But for drone, what you capture the data is a bunch of the different images, a lot of images. You have to process the data by yourself. So that's an advantage, but also a disadvantage of the drone. The advantage is you can capture what data you want. Like I can want to capture this part, I can generate my own data, and I can capture that part on the time you want. Not like the satellite remote sensing, it has a revisiting cycle, so it can only capture data when it is revisiting at this time. So for the drone, we do the data processing, most of the data processing by ourselves. For example, what we use most is Esri drone to map. And also there is Pixel 4D mapper. And basically these two share the same image processing engine. So if you use that processing these two, if the same data, similar data source, you can see the output data from these two software is identical. And also there is more like the AGI software, the photo scan. So they all have different like the parameter setting, but the similar output. Basically, they are all using a bunch of image together. They stitch image together, find the common part of different image and do the matching and stitch them into a big map. We call it also mosaic photo. So this will be a very big map, very high resolution because it stitches lots of images together, and also it has high kind of data volume. So this is a demonstration. Like when we are doing the drone mapping, what we do is we set a mapping plan. We can see this path shows the mapping plan. The mapping plan is like the drone, when it does the mapping, it will follow this path and capture images. We can see after a few meters, it will have one image, and for another meters, it have one image. And all those images, you can see it's pretty much regularly distributed along this line. So we stitch this one together and we can generate a big map like this. So let me show you some video of how we make this happen, how we set up a drone, and how we create this mapping plan for the autonomous mapping. Start the first video. So this is the first video that we show you how to set up a drone. I will jump through because we do not have enough time, but I will send the video link after the this kind of workshop and let you know, and you can watch it the entire part. So this is like the drone. We use this as a demonstration for the Phantom 4 Pro 2, version 2. And then we will introduce that how to set up everything, how to put on the propellers, what's a part, and how to put on the batteries. And we can continue jump. And here is a gimbal protector. The gimbal protector is used to protect this gimbal because gimbal it's kind of a stabilizer, so it's quite fragile. So we have to have a gimbal protector to protect this thing. And also we will jump it quickly. So I will show you how to install the battery, how to check the battery level, and also how to set up the controller. Because the drone not only have the drone itself, but also you have a controller, and the controller can control the drone from very far. On top, I've tried like 2 kilometers, it still have stable signal. Go through, and here it's introduce you how to install all the propellers. There's 2 sets of propeller, one set with black ring and one set with a silver ring, and we can match them to the dot here and install the drone. After install the propeller, we can also install the battery and turn on the drone. Then it's all set for flight. And also there is some like small setting, like how to calibration, how to get the GPS signal working. And I will introduce them one by one as well. And usually when we do the mapping, we have to connect a phone or an iPad with a drone, with a controller, so it can automatically show you what's a camera view from the drone. We call it bird's eye view. So here, I think the best option is iPad mini, and iPhone or some smartphone works as well. And here we have some small notch to let you switch between the drone, between the iPad or the your smartphone, between the bigger device and the smaller device. Okay, so here I will also demonstrate how to check the battery level actually. Okay, so this is the first training video. Let me show the second one. The second training video is basically teach you how to do the mapping. It's called autonomous mapping. So basically we use a software called GS Pro. Here we can see it's from the DJI, and also there is a similar one called Pixel 4D Capture, which can work from other drones as well. And from this one, this software, we can create a mapping plan. It's all kind of on this iPad, and we can drag everything like tape and drag and create a polygon. This polygon it can overlay with a map, so it can basically show you which part you want to mapping, like this. And here we drag this one to adjust the area you want to do the mapping, because we don't want to use a drone for just shooting the video or capture the image. We also want to create a mapping plan to do the autonomous mapping, to create a big map with very high resolution. So here we use this kind of technique and control all the parameters to create a mapping plan. And afterwards, you choose all the suitable parameters. It will follow this mapping plan and create a map. Yeah, I will jump quickly as we have time limit. But again, I will send all this kind of video in a link afterwards. Okay. Go here. And here is let's continue. After we set the mapping parameter, after we initialize the drone, we can use this drone with our customized sensor to generate a map. So here we show a comparison between the normal map, we call it RGB. It's as same as what you see, use human eye, and also the multi-spectral. Because from the multi-spectral, we can see we know that the healthy vegetation, like the healthy trees or the grass, it has a much higher responsive rate for the near infrared band. So on the multi-spectral drone map, we can see here the mangrove. The mangrove is a kind of the vegetation. It displays the red color here. We call it a false color combination because we use the near infrared as red band as green, green as blue. So when we make this combination, we can see all the vegetation coverage has been highlighted, right? So here we can see in the normal kind of the imagery, we can see the bare earth and the grass, we cannot see it's not very contrast. But from the near infrared photo, we can see the vegetation has been highlighted. It's very obvious and it looks beautiful and sharp. So from this kind of the map, or we call it image, because it's all the image here from the drone mapping, each kind of an image pixel can be corresponding to one kind of the geographic coordinates. So when we put here, we can perfectly overlay this one with a map. So we call it map as well. We generate this kind of the high resolution drone map. And this kind of the different color tone we can use to map, like here. This is a kind of the dead mangrove, dead vegetation. And the health is displayed like the darker color in this kind of the near infrared photo. But the healthy level, we can see the healthy mangrove displays a very bright color. So we can make it distinguish very easily. And when we do the classification, quantify, it will be much better and much good and much convenient for the research purpose. So the drone mapping is can not only generate different kinds of map, but compare with the traditional kind of the mapping method, like the satellite, it still have an advantage, especially over the smaller region. For example, from the previous this mapping, we also can download a satellite data, which is our traditional like the GIS data source. When we download the satellite data, we make the comparison. We can see the drone data here is represented in the blue color, and the satellite, the traditional satellite, is in the red color. Because the satellite, like the Sentinel, this satellite, it has much coarse resolution, which is about 10 meters, and the drone can achieve the sub-meter spatial resolution. So we can see if we compare with the histogram, it's very contrasty, right? The drone can get a much smoother surface and much higher kind of frequency along this histogram. So it's much advanced than the satellite data, especially for this kind of smaller region. But satellite data also have its advantage, like it do not need any cost. If you want to acquire a satellite data over San Jose, it will automatically generate data every kind of another few days, but you do not need to do anything. So the satellite data has its advantage too. So it has different application area. Okay, so the drone data can not only provide us the spectral bed as I show here, but also it can generate the high resolution DSM model. We call it a digital elevation model. It's basically give us what's the elevation variation, what's the topography, what's the landscape of a specific area. This do not require you to have a LiDAR sensor. Even you have a very basic drone, you can generate this kind of map as well. That's benefit from one kind of algorithm called structure to motion. So basically, the drone software will use illuminate from the different angle for the normal photo to derive this kind of the high resolution mapping, high resolution elevation. Here is another, I'll show you another video. So here is another video we mapped for the, it's called the Bodega Bay. It's managed by UC Davis, so it's not far from here. So from this kind of a coastal mapping, we can see this is generated from the normal drone photo, and we can see it's very high spatial resolution, right? And the topography, notice this is not photo, this is a 3D visualization, it's a model. So we can see the variation along this cliff is very kind of the high, very detailed. Everything can see so kind of the clear, right? And here sometimes here are some seals. I don't know if we can see here, but here are some seals who is baking under the sunshine, and they enjoy this time as well. And we can see again, this is a 3D visualization model from the drone mapping, and we can see all the detail, all the topography variation is very clear, right? And we can use this kind of model to do a lot of things, like a lot of different analysis for the city, for the environment, both. Change to the share screen again. Okay, so here is another kind of example. Because later this semester, our department, Urban and Regional Planning, has a drone mapping class, and ours will go to the stadium, San Jose State Stadium with students. Our provost, Dr. Casino, joined this mapping as well. So we use this kind of drone mapping technology and generate a 3D visualization of the stadium as well. And I'll show you on this kind of the scene. So we can see this is a 3D visualization of the San Jose State Stadium. And you can see here is people. We stand here doing the mapping. And if you zoom in, you can see this is a model. This is not image. See, it's very clear. Everything is so high resolution, right? And you can see the stairs. You can just drag along to see all the 3D visualization. Right. So this is another kind of mapping example. And if you have a normal drone, you make the mapping plan. We create a mapping plan over this stadium, and it can finish the mapping within like half hour, just one battery. And it's basically it takes hundreds of the image or thousands of image along a path here. I would say this path is like zigzag along all the kind of the stadium. And afterwards, we use the software to generate both high resolution image and high resolution, we call it DSM, digital surface model. And we drip the high resolution image on the surface model to generate this 3D high resolution visualization. And we can see it's very beautiful, right? Okay, so next application example, I want to show you that how we use drone and GIS to document for the arts here. So this collaboration is we will collaborate with University of Alabama. There is an African American village in Alabama. It's called Joe Minters. So basically, Joe created this museum with lots of the African arts, and we capture lots of video and generate a 3D visualization, and we mixed the video and 3D visualization to show you how we use the drone to document this art. Play this video. And then we switch from Google Earth to drone visualization. This is a 3D visualization model created from the drone. Okay, very interesting. And this is a real video. Because they are pretty similar. Drone fly video from the 3D model. Here is a real. You can see all the details, spatial details have been well preserved. African American art museum, very famous in Alabama. They have been reported on the New York Times multiple times. So we think it's better to use a high-end technology. It's a mix of the real video and the drone mapping visualization. Looks very similar, but this one you can use it any angle and check in, zoom in and zoom out at any level. Sorry, I need to switch between the different, like the video source. Okay, so here is another application of the drone for GIS. We can use the drone, we can use the GIS to document different kinds of arts, again, with the location. So each kind of the point, each kind of the single arts can show you the location and coordinates. You can find it on any kind of worldwide map. Okay, so next application, I will show you how to use a drone to drone and participatory mapping for the flood mapping. It's in another country. It's called Belize. It's in Central America, and we focus on a small village called Hopkins. Belize is a developing country. It's unlike the developed country, which has lots of data available. Like the US, we have the EPA data, we have the USGS data, all aware, and it's very comprehensive. We can get all the kind of the high quality data. But for this kind of developing country, there's no kind of the very high advanced data available. So the drone is a good tool for this kind of the application. We can create the high quality data over this kind of the developing country, which is very in the needed of their environmental analysis. So this project is basically, we collaborate with the student team funded by the REU project. So basically, we will have a student team to go to the map at different region. We can say this is also mosaic map. We have different team to map a different region. So that's a drone team. And also we will have the local survey team. The survey team will do the interview. They talked with the local people and try to get the more sense of the different building. What's this building used for? What time it built, and which kind of the area is highly risk with the flooding. This kind of the area is long-term. This country, this village, this country has been long-term suffered from the flooding risk because it's a coastal region, but people want to further investigate what's the reason and which part has a higher kind of a flooding risk. But it's always lack of this data. So from this project, we have a 5 years project. So during these 5 years, every summer, we went to the field, we went to the village and make the drone mapping for the entire village and do the GIS analysis. So basically, we use a GIS, one part of the GIS analysis we call the hydrological analysis. Using this drone, like I showed, the awesome mosaic map and the digital elevation model. From the awesome mosaic map, we can generate a classification map. That means we can classify which part is building, which part is vegetation coverage, which part is water, and which part is bare earth. And using the digital elevation model, we can do the hydrological analysis. This is a digital elevation model. We can see this is a higher kind of elevation. This is lower elevation. We can run the flow direction. This is flow direction. That means we know that with the precipitation coming, which direction of each point that the water will flow to. So some parts will have more kind of water accumulation and some parts will have lower. So this is highly related to the flood risk. And based on the classification, DEM, and water flow direction, flow accumulation, this all type of the GIS analysis, we can generate a flood risk map like this one. We can say the higher kind of the color, the red color represents, I'll go to the next. The red color here represents the higher kind of flood risk. And the darker color, the blue color here represents the lower kind of the color flooding risk. So we can say we put this one, the flood risk map overlay with a structure map. Like we know that which structure is a building, because we do the classification, we know which part is a building, we extract all the building structures, and we can do the analysis. And here is some preliminary analysis results. We can see, for example, in 2018, there is total 500 of the building which built in the flooding zone. So that's a huge number because this village is a highly developing village, especially recent years with the tour, with the developing of the tourist. But of all the new buildings built in flooding zone, only 38 of them are commercial buildings like restaurant, hotel, but about 300 of them are residential houses. So that means because of the lacking the high quality of the data, the people always make the judgment based on their experiment. So usually as a result, there's a commercial building because they have money, they have power, so they can take advantage of the good places. But the residential, because most of them as the new buildings is some of them, quite a bit of them are going to the poor people because their old building has been occupied by the commercial buildings. So, so most of them, or quite a bit of them, has been built in the high flooding zone. So this is a very sad thing, but glad we found this out via the GIS and drone mapping analysis. Okay. Okay, the last one I would like to introduce is how we use the drone to do the coastal mapping. Because this one is a collaborative project. We use drone to map all the seagrass sites along the west coast of the North America, from Alaska to San Diego. So our team uses a drone to map each kind of site. At the same time, our partner university or research institute, they will have a researcher to collect in situ the measurements for the coastal area, especially the seagrass beds, because seagrass offer a very important eco function for lots of the marine animal, algae, and aquaculture. So at recent years, there is a huge decline of the seagrass bed. So this is one of the projects we newly use the drone, incorporate the drone mapping component to want to find out the reasons. Previously, like I mentioned, for the coastal mapping, for the seagrass beds, we always use a satellite. And we can see from the satellite image, because like I mentioned, the satellite image usually is with very coarse resolution. And usually we can only see a rough boundary of the seagrass bed. Like here we can see this is a Landsat image, and we can see this color boundary. So we can roughly see the boundary of the seagrass bed. But the drone camera, because it flies low altitude, usually we fly at 200 feet or 400 feet. In US, you can fly on top of the 400 feet. So at this low altitude, first of all, it won't be influenced by the cloud coverage. For the satellite, because it's fly very high on top of the cloud level, so it's usually, if it's cloudy, you cannot get the data. But for the drone, when we fly, as long as the sunlight condition is good, we can get the great data. And we can see from the drone camera, almost each blade of the seagrass, we can see very clear. So this enables us to put the analysis at the leaf scale. And previously, with the satellite remote sensing, we cannot do that. And then we use a drone camera to capture a lot of the imagery. And we do the awesome mosaic image. We stitch them together and generate a high resolution map. And from this map, we can further investigate the seagrass distribution. And along with the time series analysis, we map during every year. And we can know that what's the temperature change, what's the changing trend, and the speed of each plant of the seagrass. So this is very kind of the cutting edge and also innovative part that none of previous research has been addressed this. So here we can see this is we call it the collaborative in situ fieldwork, because when we fly in the drone, we can see all we make a lot of preparation work, like from on this site, we deploy some transects, like the tips, to mark on the image, on the drone image. We can see the sampling area as well. And sometimes when you do the drone mapping for GIS for creating map, the water area is too homogeneous. Sometimes we really cannot put them together because lack of variation. So to create some variation, we create some we call it the targets or the ground control points. We use the red color, black color, or the orange color on top of, we deploy those anchored targets on top of water surface to create some variation and do the mapping. And simultaneously, there will be the local team to work along each kind of the street, each kind of the transect. And you can see from along the transect, they do a sampling, and we can make a corresponding, like what we see on the drone high resolution image, what it looks like, and in situ sampling, what it looks like. So this is a collaborative fieldwork, and there is lots of interesting things happen during this process. I will show you some interesting photos. So like this is a one.
Let's bring her in.
So this is how we kind of land the drone on a boat, because there is a lot of water involved. So when we landing drones on the boat, sometimes it involves some accident. Sometimes it will fall into water or it hits the side of the boat. So this is one interesting video. This is another one. Sorry. So you can see the student team is doing the in situ sampling because it's a mapping for the seagrass area. So the intertidal region is very muddy. Sometimes after we deploy the drone, after we deploy the targets and tarps, that we will sink into the mud. So this time the student team is required to crawl on your knees to not sink into the muddy area. So quite a bit interesting thing here. And I think for the future like the work, we will also carry out the similar kind of field work and the drone mapping project at San Jose State as well. Okay, so the last one project is when we're doing the drone mapping, because you know everyone loves the drone, everyone likes to fly the drone, and I think you too. So what we do is when we go to the field, we not only do the drone field work, but we also train our partner and local people to fly the drone as well. And after we're doing the first round of mapping, after we initiate these efforts, our partner have learned how to fly the drone as well. Actually, it's not hard. It's just like play video game, and everyone can learn it. Just sometimes you need to pass the FAA Part 107 lessons, because if you fly for recreational purpose, there's no kind of lessons needed. But if you fly for work, you fly for research, you need to have this kind of lessons. So we train our partner to fly the drone. So far, that lots of partners has passed the exam with our help, and then that's why we create this drone training course. And our partner can continue to collect the drone data even if we leave a drone there, but when people leave, and they can still continue to collect the drone data in the following seasons. And here I will share that this kind of the drone mapping. I will share this drone mapping course with all the videos I mentioned previously. It's all on this one. So if you, I'll put it into chat. If you want to look back, want to learn how to use drone to do the mapping, to do the GIS analysis, you can look into this open access drone mapping course, and it will teach you what all the components I've demonstrated in this workshop. It will give you the step-by-step, like the tutorial on how you use the drone, how you assemble the drone, how you use the drone to do the autonomous mapping, and after mapping, how you stitch image together using the drone to map or the Pixel 4D software and generate a map. Okay, so last, I want to mention some of our how to use the drone for education. Again, because the drone is always eye-catching, and everyone, especially the kids or the students, will love to fly the drone. So we use a lot for using drone a lot for the education, along with other kind of geospatial technologies. Like here, we're using drone and the VR goggle. This goggle, when you put it on, it will simultaneously, it's like a monitor, it's like a screen which display what the drone camera see. So when you put on this kind of goggle, you fly the drone, you use a controller to control the zone, and with the goggle, you can feel like you are really fly on the sky and with the bird's eye view. And also we use some other kind of GIS technology like the VR sandbox, and also the drone flying context with schools. So we go to school and using all these kind of things. So I would say the drone for GIS with a mapping component, with a GIS component, it can not only serve as a big toy, but also can help people to learn science and extra. And also, I also involved in a GeoBus project. We call it a mobile geospatial technology for that K-12 and higher education. So we install the drones and visualization, VR sandbox, everything, this kind of geospatial technology on this bus. And this bus can, like the mobile station, we went to the, no matter went to the field or went to the school, went to the education institute, we can use this bus to demonstrate that how the GIS, how the drones can be used for cultivate our next generation of scientists or the STEM education. Okay, so that's basically my presentation today. Thank you all for really glad to join the GIS Day, and thank you all for coming. And I'll give it to Dr. Romeo for any questions.
Oh, thanks, Bo. That was wonderful. The drones are always so fun to watch, and the applications are so varied and interesting. So we have received a lot of questions. I'm just in the name of time, I think I'm going to try to condense them where possible and join common themes. One quick question we can just start with. What types of computer are you using? What kind of power and computing power do you need to generate those DEMs, like the stadium and some of the others you showed?
Thanks for the question. I use a very normal computer. Like it's just depends on how long. Like when you stitching the image, if you have a powerful computer like the recent i7 with a very high-end graphic card, maybe you can only 1 hour can stitch a very big map. And even if you have a 10-year, we have processed it on 10 years old computer as well, it just take longer, like maybe 10 hours, but still it works. So no worries about that.
Fantastic. So this is becoming more accessible to everyone, it sounds like. Okay, another question. Do you always use, let's see, do you always use a mapping plan, or are you at sometimes self-flying, and then does the user need to have the knowledge how to drive it?
Yeah, it needs some practice, but not very kind of extensive training is needed. You just need to know a little bit about GIS, like when you're planning, you know which area you are going to map on Google Map, because most of the time it will use a Google Map as a background, and you need to draw a polygon on this kind of the Google with Google Map as a background. Like if you want to map the San Jose State campus, of course with the permission of FAA, so you just need to drag a polygon which covers this kind of the area. But sometimes it's highly, like I mentioned, it's highly limited by the battery life. Like each battery can only let you fly 20 to 30 minutes. So you won't, you cannot map too big, because if it's too big, you need multiple batteries, and sometimes it will cause some trouble.
Okay, when you're talking, especially about, you're talking about long duration flights and maybe at different elevations, can you touch on privacy and security concerns?
Yeah, that's a great question. The drone flight always involve like the privacy, and also the flight under the FAA Part 107 license. And even you do not fly for work, or you just fly for recreational, there's lots of rules. Like you cannot fly over people, you cannot fly over the private places, and you can never fly in the national park and so on. There's lots of restrictions. So what I recommend is like you learn the the link I sent with the FAA Part 107 license learning material. It gives a very detailed instruction on which kind of scenario you can fly, which kind of scenario you cannot fly. There are lots of restrictions, especially if you're involved in some human, because sometimes when drone is crashing, it fall into the human. It's a very severe damage. So I would recommend, no matter you use a drone for a recreational purpose or the work, always read the FAA like the restrictions. That will be very helpful.
Okay, and then this last set of questions, I'm going to try to put them together and let you answer. And one, is more technical. So if you have a satellite that has the capability that's the same resolution as a drone, would the drone always be more accurate? And would you have, say, less atmospheric scatter, or would the wind become a problem? So that's question one. Question two is, are some of these points interpolated to create the 3D model? And then what do you do when there's gaps? And this is a really good question. What do you do with like a point cloud that has gaps?
So I'll answer the point of the gaps question first. The gaps is related to when you create the mapping plan. When we create the mapping plan, we're trying to use a higher kind of the percentage of overlap. Because when we create that plan, that each line, they have overlap. So make sure when they do the mapping, the image has quite a large, I would say 70% or 80% of the image is overlapping with the last one, so that the gap can be all filled. There's no gap. But if you use kind of smaller overlap, that this problem will be more kind of severely. The other question is the satellite vs drone. So for the time being, or the recent 10 years, I would say there's no comparative between drone and the satellite, because satellite, you know, the satellite can functional or the undergoing for a long time, because it fly very high altitude, and the gravity can be compensated by the other, like the when you fly the circle like this one. So it have to fly quite a bit like altitude to overcome the gravity. But the drone is another thing. The drone is like we use this quadcopter with battery powered, so it can fly lower. So it's much lower than the satellite. So that means in terms of the resolution, the drone will much higher than the satellite. Like we use a drone, if we fly 200 feet, we can change 1 centimeter. And the satellite currently the most advantage, I think, is 10 meter or something, or 1 meter. But still, you compare 1 centimeter to 10 meter. There's a huge difference. So I think this problem will be going on, but maybe another 10 years it's still the case.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Rohemeyer. Thank you, Dr. Yang. That was very interesting, very informative, and perfect questions. We have one more question in the Q&A, I guess. So I'm going to shut myself. Carrie, do you want to take care of that question, or do you want me to?
Yes, I'm sorry, that one I just missed. It's can flight height affect drone resolution versus battery life? That's a good question.
Yeah, very good question. When you fly higher, the spatial resolution, the image quality will be lower, but the coverage, the one battery coverage, will be larger. And it's vice versa. We fly lower, higher resolution, smaller coverage for one battery.
Perfect. Well, these questions show lots of interest in your work, Dr. Yang. So we would expect too many students next semester signing up for your course. This was a small demo of what he is going to do next semester. I would like to sign up for your course as well. But it's a great time to actually transfer to Mr. Marshall Ballard, Transportation Informatics Architect at Fehr Peers. This year, we were honored to partner with Fehr Peers Mobility Consultation Firm. Mr. Ballard, as an interdisciplinary geographer, data scientist, transportation planner, and certified GIS professional, is at the intersection of implementing advanced data analytics. Sorry, I need to share my slide because then there is no reason that he's at the intersection of implementing advanced data analytics and multimodal, multidisciplinary transportation planning and design. His contemporary work experience focuses on integrated mobility projects, curbside management project, Vision Zero analysis, what you will learn today more about, and data specification management. He architected mobility performance metrics for large transit research projects. His experience with data systems is full cycle with the implementation of open source software solutions for real-time vehicle location and trip planning solution for the Santa Clara Valley Transportation Authority. Beyond data analytics and database design and implementation, Mr. Ballard has authored and advised on the development of agency data management plans, including open data policies. Mr. Ballard enjoys sharing his experience, presenting and teaching courses at GIS conferences. Thank you very much for joining us today, and let me basically share the stage with you, Mr. Ballard.
Great, thank you, Aura. Let me share my screen here. Is that active for you to see?
Yes.
Great, well, thank you. Hello, my name is Marshall Wilson Ballard, and I'm an alumnus of San Jose State, where I received my master's in geography, focusing on remote sensing. So I've been with Fehr Peers for a little over 3 years, and based out of our San Jose office, and I manage our company-wide enterprise GIS. And previously, I architected and built out and managed the enterprise GIS at the Santa Clara Valley Transportation Authority, where I worked for 11 years. I've worked within GIS for over 20 years in multiple disciplines, and today I'm going to share with you, how speed dominates collision causes in Pinellas County, Florida, for their Vision Zero analysis. But first, I'd like to share a little bit about Fehr Peers with you. So, our clients have trusted us to be their partners in transportation planning and engineering since 1985. We integrate our commitment, mission, and vision in 3 distinct ways: a talented workforce, a robust research and development program, and a local community focus. We have 20 offices in 8 states and the District of Columbia. So who are we? We're engineers, we're planners, we're designers, geographers. We also invest in our own research and development, often linked to contemporary needs discussed at Transportation Research Board or other policy driving agencies. And some of the disciplines we coordinate with are in transit, specifically land use, bicycle and pedestrian, complete streets, equity, safety, engineering and design, and data science. Today, I'm going to kind of give you a bit of a deep dive on data science and how spatial analysis can assist for specific use cases, such as a Vision Zero analysis. So at Fehr Peers, data science is kind of considered a horizontal discipline, if you will, as we assist all the other disciplines within the company. And it's often a piece of different projects, whether they're big or small. We often leverage appropriate data storage and extraction, translation and loading, is critical to the success and likely first step in our exploratory data analysis. Using standardized analytical methodologies backed by industry research and core technology stacks such as Esri Enterprise GIS servers. Lastly, an important component of it is how we communicate and visualize the analysis to our clients and to the constituents. And that is really critical to the success of the work. So kind of an overview of the demonstration itself. I'm going to walk you through really understanding the problem and the area. As mentioned in the panel discussion, what is the geography, the area of interest? What are the attributes of that area of interest? Its roadways, its infrastructure. And then walk you through data exploration, data discovery, and access to the local data for the project itself. And then kind of dive in a bit on the analysis methodology, which was rooted in the San Francisco Department of Public Health's high injury network methodology, and how we're able to adapt scripts to help process that data en masse. Then walk you through a little bit about visualizing the data and how we're able to use server infrastructures to deploy different tools to engage with the public and show spatial correlations. And finally, like some deliverables and some resources that I'm going to share with you, and hopefully you'll have an opportunity to test them out on your own. But I'll walk you through those independently. And just a few keywords to make sure everyone's understands it's killed or severely injured. Looks like I misspelled that. It should be KSI, not KIS. So apologies. High injury network, or HIN. Then the 3 vulnerable users, bicyclists, pedestrians, and motorcyclists. So what is Vision Zero? So essentially it's an international effort, and it's really begun to take foot here in the United States, began over in Norway. It's really centered around preventing traffic deaths and acknowledging that humans make mistakes, and really getting into not trying to eliminate all crashes, but prevent the severe and fatal crashes. And part of that's going to be through a safe system design. Another component is really taking a look at, the data that's behind collisions, and also the design of our networks, our roadway networks, and trying to assist in making decisions based off of those, based off of that data, and incorporating a large piece of social equity in that roadway safety. So it's safe for all users. It's not just going to be safe for drivers. Why does this matter? Pinellas County in Florida, where St. Petersburg, Clearwater, some of the most pristine and beautiful beaches in the country exist, had one of the highest injury and fatality rates in the nation. Nationally, there's over 40,000 traffic fatalities per year in the United States. And Pinellas County, on average, had 2 people killed or severely injured in collisions nearly each day. The graphic you see there kind of shows your death risk at different speeds, and it dramatically increases as a vehicle speed increases. So, at the end of the day, what was and is causing this problem in Pinellas County? Right? Is there contextual analysis that we can conduct after understanding local hotspots? So can we dig in a bit on speed limits and speed of travel? Looking at roadway geometries, width of the roadways, is there a lack of bicycle or pedestrian infrastructure? How does the signage play a role here? Are there any traffic calming measures that are in place? And this we'll kind of revisit this as we carry on throughout the presentation here. So first, I'm going to kind of show some of the underlying summaries of the data that we discovered and uncovered here. So really, the first component is understanding a mode split, and really diving in a bit deeper on, is this a vehicle? Is it a bicycle, pedestrian, motorcycle, or some other mode? Probably would have been truck at this point. So really seeing how it's split up by the collision itself versus the killed or severely injured or the fatal collisions. And each mode, you can tell, has a different level of severity as you become, sequentially go through them. So the data that we analyzed was over a 5-year period of time, from September 2014 through August 2019. So looking at speed limits for pedestrians and showing you the difference between collisions with pedestrians at 25 miles per hour or lower, 30 to 35 miles per hour, 40 to 45 or over 50. And just the frequency or the quantity that is essentially shifting by speed level in killed or severely injured and fatal as well. Next one is going to be a comparison with instead of pedestrians with bicyclists. There's a slightly smaller sample size for the fatal collisions there for bicyclists. Then the third vulnerable user category we were focusing on was motorcyclists, and really seeing the higher speeds dominate the severely fatal injured. As I mentioned earlier, how do you tell the story once you've completed your analysis and really delivered on this? So one of the interesting pieces of the puzzle to this project was actually the time frame of when it took place. And we had begun the analysis at the end of 2019. And we had a large public outreach effort planned for March 2020, which was delayed a little bit and began in April, peak of COVID. So the choice of using web server and crowdsourced technologies to gain feedback from the constituents in the county, the public, stakeholders was critical to the success of the project itself. I'll walk you through some of these when I'm done with the slide deck. I'll dive into the actual tech stacks themselves and walk you through those. So as many projects, and probably some of the students that are watching right now are familiar with creating story maps, and that was a big part of the project itself, was creating a story map to tell the story about the analysis and provide an opportunity for people to engage with the MPO, Forward Pinellas. Another big component was creating a crowdsourcing opportunity to listen to the community and really get feedback. 36% of over 200 comments were related to speed, and it was the highest category. The comment period was open for a little over 2 months, and we received over 200 comments. And it was extremely important that we use this tool to really get that feedback. It was pretty amazing to see it be populated over time. Another component to this was upon completing the killed and severely injured and high injury network initial analysis, was to provide stakeholders the opportunity to mark up maps and dynamically edit and iterate through the hotspots and the areas that needed to be contiguously created, rather than having a very fragmented look at a high injury network. Another really interesting part was the opportunity to use computer vision trajectories to analyze near-miss collisions at one of the hotspot intersections that was selected. And what you can see is the trajectories of vehicles and potential conflicts identified by the red dots that they either have with a pedestrian in a crosswalk or with another vehicle. And you can see some of the key highlights here. And 60 people driving ran a red light. 61 people walking or bicycling crossed on red, but over 3,000 potential near misses were observed. So ultimately, the high injury network that was decided upon resulted as 3% of the roadways within the county, which had 40% of the total collisions. And just for some perspective, if we had 75% of those collisions on the roadways, it resulted in a 17% of the roadways being included as a high injury network, which is completely unreasonable to expect when you're identifying capital improvement projects to demonstrate improvements and enhancements. So that's why we dialed this back and got it down to a 3% of total roadways using the 40% collision mark. The other component of this, to touch on some of the equity sides of this, is 73% of the high injury network is bounded by communities of concern within the county. And as you can see in this graphic, the speed limits were definitely a huge cause here. So you can see the identified speed limits of 40 miles per hour or higher, and 80% of the high injury network had a speed limit of 40 miles per hour or higher. And 67% of all killed or severely injured collisions occurred in that network itself. So I think we did a pretty good job in identifying the most ideal area to focus capital improvement projects on. And that's where the implementation side of things come in. So the effort has resulted in an action plan to integrate different safety improvements inside this high injury network. And a series of demonstration projects will be are actually beginning in early 2022. So now I'm going to kind of pivot and talk a little bit more technical and dive in on the actual analysis itself. So access to the data in this case was hosted by a third party, and oftentimes is done that. Sometimes it could be aggregated by a consultant to the state or a region itself. In this case, a consultant in Florida was hosting it for Pinellas County. And in their crash data management system or their database, it was a starting point for us and really evaluating the data. So taking a look at the 17 years of total data that they had and narrowing down and iterating through the process of analyzing the data and optimizing it for the 5-year period from 2015 through 2019. The other data resources we use were OpenStreetMap and the Street Network, schools, trails, and pathways. So one of the key things as you begin your career in GIS is really understanding how to use servers and REST endpoints, and a different perspective of using or accessing crash data from that I took on this project was actually just accessing it through the REST endpoint and adding the server connection directly into ArcGIS Pro. You can also do that with ArcMap as well. So in doing this, it's really being able to extract the features directly off of the server rather than using a front end query system that may exist. And the REST endpoints are really essentially your API into their GIS server, and it facilitates data connections and data processing. So a couple things that we did with this project is using a couple different Python scripts written in ArcPy, and these scripts essentially allowed us to review the data, validate it, and also add attributes that summarized the existing data within it. And it really helped us create a more enhanced collision file that we could use to summarize data sources. It also enabled us to dive in on the analytical methodology, which followed the Vision Zero high injury methodology that I mentioned earlier from the San Francisco Department of Public Health. Once we were able to clean up the collision location files, we were able to run through a giant model builder here and develop the high injury network, and essentially categorizing the collision point locations to the street network itself. So it's basically computing a cumulative percentage of collisions on that network. It's kind of based on an arbitrary index or a multimodal high injury network index. It's the average of the percentile rankings between pedestrian, bike, and auto, and motorcycle as well. Essentially, the tool's helping develop the high injury network quickly by aggregating network segments in order to set your chosen network index. So at the end of the day, this is how we were able to calculate and generate the high injury network itself. What we did exactly was identify street segments and prioritize them by mode type. So in a moment, I'll show you, and it looks like a very fragmented map, but the perspective it gives you is very deep in the sense of understanding how a weighted analysis can pivot off of a raw count of collisions. So at the end, this model builder utilizes the aggregate length of the network to compute the high entry network. And sometimes, if you have a dual carriageway roadway, you'll have to eliminate that to create the proper high entry network. And this model builder is taking that into consideration using the merge divided roadway tool in ArcGIS. So in order to deliver the solutions and the data to the client in a very effective way, we used our own server infrastructure to host the information. And just have a couple of screenshots there of what an enterprise ArcGIS server looks like. Looks a little bit different than ArcGIS Online. And there's a lot of value in being able to learn how to manage server content from both a security level, but also just from a hosting level, and the different features that you have, you're capable of in using it, as it varies from enterprise GIS server to ArcGIS Online. Also, it has full capability of creating web applications and web apps, just as ArcGIS Online does. So now let's walk over and just give you a quick dive on. Just want to make sure that that activated on the screen, or is that showing the new screen that I brought over?
Yes, your browser.
Great, thank you. So I just wanted to show off the Crowdsource tool briefly and the functionality of it and being able to place points. Just gonna skip instructions. So you have your observation points that are here, and it's all controlled by domains that you create within the file geodatabase. Then you can place a comment, and as a point, just select over here, and you have a drop-down menu of it. Drivers make unsafe turns, lane changes, and just hit test in there, and you can even upload an image if you wish, and you can then publish that report. The thing that it also enables is the ability to select on existing points in there and see what people were labeling and putting down as a comment to the MPO. And it enables folks to upvote. And so this technology is actually built on the crowdsource reporter technology that's easily deployable within the Esri stack and ArcGIS Online. The next thing I'd like to show you is actually the full web application catalog that we put together for the client, which is a series of story maps, and really provides perspective and gives you the opportunity to share detailed statistics with the client and their constituents. Enables us to put into play how to use this tool. So it's very familiar and comfortable for everybody. And yeah, I'd created a hex bin analysis of hotspots around the county, and it very much shows right along corridors. That's where you're going to have higher incidences of collisions. And then basically creating a how-to guide and explaining each and every widget that you'll experience in the different tabs, so that a user is easily comfortable having access to this application. Diving in a bit more and really looking at the hosted data that we have and showing the 5 years worth of, or actually in this case, excuse me, it's the 3 years worth of data in the types of modes that they are, and being able to zoom in on the resources themselves and see where you have got pockets of different types of collisions by different modes, and summarizing the quantity of killed or severely injured within the active screen. next was just looking at what a hotspot or heat map would look like from a collision perspective, and being able to serve that up and have it be dynamic for the public to engage with. And then lastly was the explanation of the high injury network as itself. And as I mentioned earlier, this is the 40% of collisions on a 3% of the roadways broken up by mode. So the modes are bicycle, pedestrian, motorcycle, and automobile. And as you zoom in, you can see there's different fragments of things. So you can see there's a pretty consistent automobile collision along those segments of that roadway there. You can see large swaths of bicycle collisions are included here, and even motorcycle are identified in that location there. So this was used by the stakeholders to come back in and really discuss as a stakeholder group and mark up what they're interested in seeing as a final high injury network, and allowing them to make a decision on what that looked like by basically drawing it and iterating through. This is what they ended up building out themselves, and over top of the areas that we had identified through the analysis. So at this time, I'm going to take us into California collision data. And California collision data is hosted from in two locations. The more popular one is hosted at UC Berkeley through TIMS. And this is queried out for personal injury only. Whereas the ISWITRS data, which is cataloged and controlled by CHP, has not only all the personal injury data that you'll find in TIMS, but it also has property damage only. So if someone wasn't injured in a collision, it would be in there as well. So let me also put the link to that into the chat window in a moment here. So let's see. Let's go back here. So you will have to register to use the account itself, and put it in the chat. So hopefully people will take a look at how to use this tool. It's a really great tool. I've done a couple of pre-canned analyses just to walk you through, but the available tools covers a lot of information in here. Your ability to use the SWITRS data and query and map. Now, again, even though it's telling us it's SWITRS, it's not the entire SWITRS database. It's just the personal injury data that's been queried out by TIMS. And then you have the ability to query and map it. You can dive in a bit deeper on the crash diagram itself. You can look at the performance management aspect of how you chart the data out. You can look at different active transportation data summaries, and the most recent thing that they've added is the motorcycle crash map. So looking at the active transportation programs, a summary of data, I'm just simply coming down here and selecting Santa Clara County and San Jose, and interested in looking at state highway related crashes as well. We're interested in pedestrian and bicyclist and all types of severities, and for the 5-year period. And it gives you a summary of data. So in essence, what this tool is beginning to do for you is your exploratory data analysis of SWITRs itself. And it's nice to have a resource like this that's providing that insight and gives you the perspective to evaluate data prior to extracting it and using it on a project. So taking a different approach at looking at Santa Clara County and all of the collisions that occurred in Santa Clara County between January 1st, 2018 and December 31st, 2018. There were over 7,700 crashes mapped. So if we come in here, we can, this is the initial query page, but I want to just take a look at what happens if we do crash severity and just query out injury for severe injuries and fatalities and update that, and we'll see what happens to the data. So 1 year period of time, there's 513 of the 533 killed or severely injured collisions are mapped out, and you have access to this information. You can click on a specific location of a collision and see some of the attributes that are included in there. So crash severity of the 2, so it was severe. Fortunately, no one was killed, but 3 people were injured. And it gives you a bit of perspective on the type of crash it was, with a rear end and with another motor vehicle. No pedestrian or bicyclists were involved. So it's a great opportunity to do a bit more research and understand how data like this can be used on a variety of planning projects, whether it's transportation specific or something that could be integrated with land uses, and taking a look at adjacent land uses and attempting to see if there's a correlation with any type of land use and collision in a hotspot area. And diving in a bit deeper and looking at are there opportunities for traffic calming in the space itself. So how do you apply planning solutions, transportation planning solutions to the problems there? Looking at complete streets, looking at traffic calming, really trying to understand the contextual design and how those might be able to enhance the safety of the area. So, just looking at a few other things, it gives you the opportunity to download the crashes that you've selected, create a crash diagram. You can rank by intersection. So this tool that SafeTrack and UC Berkeley have put together is extremely valuable and very deep in its ability to assist with data analytics. It takes a lot of development time out of play and allows you to get a real good jump start on a project, a Vision Zero project or a collision analysis project. And that is about it for my presentation and demonstration. Just have one more slide to share here. If you're interested in learning a bit more about career opportunities at Fehr Peers, I encourage you to check out our website, fehrandpeers.com/careers. And feel free to reach out to me as well. I'll put that in the chat link. And also wanted to say happy GIS Day to everybody. Thought this was a fun graphic from Esri. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Marshall. That was a very interesting and other basically side of GIS with respect to public health Thank you very much for covering a very valuable data set, particularly the transportation injury mapping system is a great dashboard. Not only visualizing the data, but also allowing to download the raw data. Very interesting items that you covered today. Let's see if there is any question. Thank you. I posted a question that you immediately basically covered in your demo of the dashboard.
I had a question, if there's a moment. Marshall, that was fantastic. I was interested not only because I'm from Southwest Florida, my grandparents lived in St. Petersburg, and I totally understood the reason for the study initially. I wanted to ask, I thought your model was impressive. The tool that you built was great. Did you consider like a homegrown Mapbox alternative, or you just knew Esri was the right product for this particular purpose that you had? I'm just curious because I really am interested in web mapping and there are a lot of options. So how do you choose what's the right thing at the right time?
It's a great question. Typically my default is to go with the infrastructure we already have, which is our Esri stack. We have enterprise GIS server. We have a development environment and a production environment. So it really gives you the ability to develop out everything, iterate through it with the client. And then when you get to that final piece of the puzzle, then you can move it over to production. Of course, you can establish that same environment using open source software like GeoServer and using Leaflet or other front end or other third-party software like Mapbox or CartoDB. There's different solutions like that, but I have been using Esri for over 20 years, from starting with ArcView 3.2, and it's been pretty good to me over the years. There's been a lot of great enhancements, and I'm really excited about a lot of cool things that are occurring with ArcGIS Pro right now and integration with big data opportunities. So, beyond that, one of the emphasis that I like is that they do provide free software to students, and when you're done with your studies and you have an opportunity to have an internship, you can walk in day one and have familiarity with the software that we're using at Fehr Peers. It's not to say that we don't have folks, including myself, that use QGIS, because we do. And, expanding solutions is something that I'm going to be looking at doing in the next couple of years as well, and beginning to host up alternative platforms and tech stacks.
Hey, great. We are running against time. We have a couple of 3 minutes to go to next section. I think what we need exactly at this moment are those pieces of cakes, Marshall, that you put there to keep going. Thank you again for covering very fantastic presentation and introduction to great dashboards, data set, and modeling. I'm sure that it gave students lots of ideas. We are working together for more collaboration and talks at the Advanced GIS courses that we have in fall. So we'll hopefully have Marshall more on campus in our courses to do the great presentations and introduction that he did so far. Thank you for posting the link, and if you have any questions for Marshall, feel free to reach out, and you saw career opportunities in his firm. So I think by now, after this many great presentation and talks, the first thing that's going to come to your mind is that I want to start learning GIS somewhere. Where should I learn about education? Where are the education programs that I should get involved? Okay, we have 3 perfect people to respond to your questions. Dr. Kerry Meyer, Professor Rick Koss, and Mrs. Alison Mizan. They have the answer to your question after slides. I think Dr. Meyer is gonna talk about short award fun game for attendees too. So Dr. Rohmeyer, ready to take the stage?
Absolutely, thanks, Ahura. We're going to start. Allison is going to tell us about Foothill Community College and the programs that they have. And then Rick and I are going to talk about opportunities here at San Jose State.
Thank you, Carrie. So do you want to go into slide presentation mode? And I'll just talk you through my slides here. Hi, I'm Allison Linkett-Mizan, and I'm here from Foothill Community College, just down 280 from you guys up in Los Altos Hills. So for those of you who are not familiar with the community colleges, I wanted to first share with you a little bit about what the California Community College system is and where it sort of fits into the overall educational picture of California. And then also talk a little bit about what we offer at Foothill. And I know there were some questions earlier on about how the Foothill program compares to the other regional programs where GIS is offered, specifically at Diablo Valley College up in Concord. So first of all, it's just so great to see these real world applications of GIS. So the drones and all the traffic collision data, because that's really what inspires us and inspires our students. So the community college offers the first 2 years of a 4-year degree. So we get students straight out of high school who are looking to transfer to places like San Jose State, and they can get all of their general education requirements out of the way. In addition, the community colleges also do what's called career technical education. So this is everything from nursing and radiologic technology to auto shop to geographic information systems. So that is also where our program fits in. And then the third prong of the community colleges is lifelong learning. So that is acknowledging the fact that we are never done learning. And as new technologies and new ideas come along, the community college is your first stop for those sorts of educational opportunities. So geospatial technology fits into all three of those areas. And at Foothill, we offer an associate's degree for transfer students in geospatial technology. We also offer the same associate's degree, but it fits for a post-baccalaureate sort of position. So we get probably over half of our students are post-baccalaureate. They have their bachelor's degree in environmental science or urban planning, and they have learned about GIS sort of peripherally in their studies, and they decide that they really want to do a deep dive. The post-baccalaureate degree also can be a gateway into entry into a master's program, such as what San Jose State offers. And then we also offer career technical education certificates or CTE certificates. So let me talk a little bit more about those. And then also, as I talk about the courses that we offer at Foothill, I think it will become clear a little bit more how our program fits in with the other schools in the region. So next slide, please. So at Foothill, we offer a handful of core courses. So these are specifically focused on geospatial technology. And the first two courses that we offer are GIS T11 and 12, Intro to Mapping and Spatial Reasoning and the Intro to Geospatial Technology, are both what we call fully articulated with all community colleges and all CSUs in the state of California. So there is a sharing agreement for sort of those general education foundational classes within the California higher education system. And so our GIS T11 is equivalent to the San Jose State, I believe it's Geography 107 or something like that, but they have that equivalent Intro to Mapping and Spatial Reasoning class. Diablo Valley has a similar one. So the course numbers are different, the titles are slightly different, but the schools have all agreed that if you take this class at DVC or at Foothill, you can transfer it to San Jose State. Now, our higher level classes, anything at Foothill that is over a course number of 50, transfers to schools where we have a one-to-one articulation agreement. And that's where the special relationship between Foothill and San Jose State comes in, because our more advanced classes, our GIST 52 and 53, our remote sensing class, those are specific to Foothill, but we have transfer agreements with select schools around the state. So the question about how our program fits in with GIS classes that are offered at City College of San Francisco, Skyline, or DVC, again, they're all going to be fairly similar in that intro level because they have that same sort of agreed upon curriculum. The DVC program really focuses more on drones and mapping, whereas the Foothill program focuses a lot more on data science and visualization. And I think that will become clear in my final slide. So next slide, please. So this is our full certificate program. So if you want to get, say, an AA degree, these are sort of your major courses. And then you would take your gen ed courses, your English and arts classes and all of that in addition. So we sort of divided into our fun introduction to the discipline course, which is our Intro to Mapping and Spatial Reasoning. That uses exclusively ArcGIS Online. And then we move into our core classes, which use both ArcGIS Online, ArcGIS Pro, and QGIS. And so we sort of step students through starting from, hey, this is what a GIS is, all the way to doing some fairly advanced analysis using the spatial analytics tools in ArcGIS Pro. In addition, students who are going to be really focusing on going into GIS as a career can take a number of electives outside of our department that are inside the computer science department. So you see that one of our core classes, sort of the required central class, is that intro to programming with Python or Java. But then we also suggest that students take more advanced Python courses, database management, data visualizations, data analytics, and then some geography courses to get that core of spatial thinking going on. And I think if you click one more time, that will show what are different, maybe two more times. There we go, go teamwork. So that shows what our different certificates involve. So basically they stack. So we will have people who come in and take our certificate 1 who just want to learn a little bit more about GIS, and then all the way to the certificate 3 for people who ultimately want to take a job like what Marshall Ballard does. They probably can't step right into that, but where that is the ultimate trajectory. So I'm going to hand the reins over to Carrie now.
Well, thank you. That was terrific. And I will say we've had such great conversations with Foothill about how we can work together more. We've had a number of great students come out of the AA program and transfer in, and we have sent some of our graduates to the post-baccalaureate program who have had great success getting good jobs in Silicon Valley. So it's a two-way street. I want to emphasize that there is room for GIS education at every level and every institution. Of course, we're very proud here at San Jose State. We're one of the oldest geography programs, actually predating the official San Jose State Foundation. It was a previous institution. So we're one of the oldest programs in the West. Of course, GIS is a newer technology. And so what we offer students here are a 4-year degree, a Bachelor of Arts in Geography, that students are able to take a range of GIS classes and remote sensing. And we do have articulation so that students who are transferring in will be able to get a lot of credit for the work that they're doing elsewhere. And that's one thing that we really pride ourselves on. We're about getting students in, making them successful and get out in a timely manner. It's important to all of us. We have a GIS minor for those students who are not looking for a Bachelor of Arts degree, but are looking for that GIS education and foundation. They take the intro class, the advanced class, and 2 electives. It's an easily attained 13 units, and that is a really great addition to anybody in a related field who thinks that the software use of GIS can apply to their research interests or their topic interests. We also have an advanced certificate at the graduate level and a Master of Arts in Geography, which is a 30-unit program, 2-year program with a strong emphasis on GIS. And one of the things we wanted to talk about tonight is that we've spent the last 2 years really working up to something that's quite a large announcement. We've submitted the paperwork to the CSU to be the first program to have a Bachelor of Science degree in Geographic Information Science. There are other programs in the CSU that have it as a concentration of a related field, or in geography as a concentration, but there is no degree right now a 4-year degree in GIS. So we aim to be the very first. And I want to emphasize the spring 2023 as our first enrollment. Maybe that works into some of our audience's plans. It might also work into the little game after this. And spring of 2023. So we're going to be coming around, hopefully talking to your classes and any other classes in the Bay Area who are interested to hear more as this becomes a real thing very soon. With that, I wanted to have Rick talk about the classes that we offer here at San Jose State, the types of courses and when they're going to be on board.
Great, thank you, Carrie. And I promise we're almost at the end of the event. I'll be very, very quick. And I did want to emphasize some of the classes that we offer at the undergraduate and graduate level. And by the way, I'm very delighted to see so many of our current students in the participant list. So here are kind of a sampling of the GIS classes we offer at the undergraduate level. By the way, the ones shown in yellow, Geography 107 and Geography 170, are offered this coming spring. So if you're really dying and excited to get into GIS as early as possible, you might want to consider these classes. Geography 107 is called Mapping the World. It's really a terrific overview class covering the physical systems and processes of the Earth. And that class explores these processes through data and mapping, through satellite data, through aerial imagery, and other data sources. Really great class to get your feet wet. Geography 170 is also a very popular class, Introduction to GIS, involving a lot of hands-on work with GIS software, lab environment, a lot of support from the professors. So it's a nice step to take after completing 107. And other classes are listed here. For example, Urban Planning 179A is a course I teach called Fundamentals of GIS for Urban Planning. And in that class, we primarily focus on ArcGIS Online, which is essentially browser-based GIS. So we do a lot of exercises, including field data collection and representing that data in a browser-based GIS. So if we could go to the next slide, please. Here we wanted to show you some of our graduate level classes. And I should also mention that these courses are, of course, open to San Jose State students, but they are also open to students outside of the university through Open University. So you can take these courses as a non-matriculating student as well. So here are some of the graduate level classes. You can see 239 is listed in yellow, which means it will be offered this coming spring. Geography 239 covers a really wide variety of GIS skills, and it helps students explore tools and techniques for visualizing data. Very, very powerful, very marketable skill. Other courses listed here include Urban Planning 275G. This is just a 1-unit course if you're interested in how urban planners use GIS. You might want to consider taking this short course. It's an asynchronous course, meaning you can proceed at your own pace. And in that course, I cover a number of tools, including demographic mapping. We explore facets of urban sustainability. We also do some field data collection as well in that class. And if you decide to take your skills to a much higher level, you might consider taking 282 or Urban Planning 279. 279 is also a class that I teach. I love teaching this class because the students that take it are really into GIS. They're really excited to push the envelope, so to speak. One of the fun parts of 279 is we undertake work for clients. So we do actual work for actual agencies, and it looks wonderful on a resume. And it also helps students build their professional network. So if you're interested in the undergraduate classes, Dr. Rohrmeyer, who you just met, will be happy to help you there. And graduate classes, I'll be happy to help advise students in that course selection. So please contact either one of us. We'll get you started. That's really all I wanted to cover. I quickly wanted to give a big shout out to eCampus, which is an organization here at San Jose State that provides us with a terrific level of support, not the least of which being managing our ArcGIS online organizational account, which gives out licenses to our students. So big thanks, eCampus, really appreciate that.
Maybe we can give Anthony to a couple of minutes. We are really honored that they partner with us. They could talk about a little bit of the infrastructure that they share with students and faculty and everybody who wants to get engaged in GIS education.
Sure. Hi, how you doing? Hello, everybody. My name is Anthony Bolaños. Let me go ahead and share my screen real quick. I got a few slides and I'll make it brief. Let me get this over here. My name is Anthony Bolaños. I'm an instructional designer with eCampus. We're looking at IRC 206. There's our email address, eCampus@sjsu.edu. So if you have any questions about ArcGIS or any other products that we have through our department, you're more than welcome to contact us there. And there's our phone number too as well, 408-924-2337. We also have our website, which is our eCampus website, which you'll find some of the resources there for ArcGIS there, as well as the student learning resources, Learn Anywhere. That's one of the websites you can go to find out what stuff is available to you as students and stuff like that. A few other resources, Esri, the ArcGIS Online we have. We also do Canvas Learning Management System there. Zoom, Respondus Lockdown Browser, and LinkedIn Learning, and Adobe Creative Cloud. So we do have student assistance there 7 days a week until 7 p.m. at night. So if you have any questions or you have any issues with ArcGIS or need to know how to sign in and stuff like that, we provide that to you. Another thing we have here is we also have ArcGIS GIS Professional and Advanced tools for environment, which allows you for your map creation and a few other things that you see listed there. You also will have your role as a publisher. We also have Esri e-learning resources available for all faculty, staff, and students there at that link right there. There's also online classes for Esri from Esri available for faculty and staff as well. A few add-ons that you get with your licensing when you do sign up for ArcGIS. You get ArcGIS Community Analyst, GeoPlanner, Pro Extensions, as well as Urban Suite. There's a few screenshots there for that, for Urban Planner, GeoPlanner, and Urban. And then also you get extensions. The extensions are listed here. That's more than your your 3 sentences there for a slide, but there's a lot of information there. These are the extensions that are available to you. We also have Esri credits at 5,000 for you when you start. So that's all available to you as students for us. Go Spartans. Love that statue. Again, we are eCampus, IRC 206. There's our phone number and there's our web browser or email address there. So that way you can get a hold of us and you have any technical issues with any of your accounts and stuff like that for Esri products and stuff like that, you can contact us there and leave send us an email or leave a message. Or if our students' assistants are there, they'll be able to assist you with that. And thank you very much for having eCampus here at ArcGIS Day.
Terrific. Thanks, Anthony. Appreciate that. Thank you again for all the support your office provides. We are at a point now. Yes. So we're at a point now where we're going to bring our evening to a close. And with that, I'd like to return the floor to Dr. Ramasubramanian.
Hi, everyone. It's my distinct pleasure to thank everyone who sponsored this event, who participated, and most of all to our attendees who've been patiently joining us for the last close to 3 hours that we've been together in this virtual sphere. I hope each one of you got something interesting out of this GIS Day presentation and enjoyed it as much as we, all of us who organized it, enjoyed putting it together for you. So we're really, again, appreciative to Dr. Abousalem, to Dr. Lynn Usery, to Dr. Sarah Battersby, to Marshall Ballard, to Allison, and everyone who came together today. And as I put in the chat, thanks you also to the support from SJSU eCampus. I cannot say enough about my amazing colleagues at SJSU who have been critical and vital to the success of GI science at SJSU. So public thank you to all of you. And over to you, Ahura. I thought you mentioned something about
Well, yes.
competition.
Yes, that's okay. In the chat box, we have a little bit of game. Can I return it back to Dr. Rohemeyer, and then I will talk about the Esri licenses that we have after you, Dr. Rohemeyer.
Well, we thought we'd end with something fun. For those who have stayed, there's a $20 Amazon gift card on the table for the top scoring person of our Geo game. So if you go to menti.com and enter the code in the chat, you're able to insert answers, and it's like a Kahoot. If anybody has done one of those, we only have 5 questions, but I see people, as you can see, there's avatars showing up. This looks like we're almost ready to play. And then Payush, are you controlling the screen?
Yes. So
Panelists too.
we have 8 right now. So we'll give 10 more seconds before we start the game.
Looks like we're getting a pretty good turnout. Great.
All right, so we have 18 now. Okay, I'll start the countdown.
And these questions are timed. What does GPS stand for? Okay, there's one more question. I'm glad to see that universal response on that one. So if, let's see, Ribbit could let us know who that belongs to in the chat, we'll make sure to get you your prize tonight. So thanks for playing along. Just a fun way to end the evening. And I'll turn it back to Hora.
That was very interesting. That was a hard situation for the panelists, because when there's a game and we cannot participate, that was very difficult, but we stayed patient. But thank you very much. I am very grateful to our partners, Fehr Peers, eCampus, Foothill College, all of the panelists, great panelists that they took part in this GIS Day. Thanks to my colleagues for helping us to make it a great, basically GIS Day event. Hopefully today would be the last virtual GIS Day, and hopefully next year we'll get together all in a person, basically gathering event. Let's call the night. Have a good night, everybody, and thank you for joining us.
Can you do that?
Yeah, something that Esri licenses, I don't think anybody from non-SJSU is here that would need the Esri licenses. So that would be, that's okay. Okay, have a good night. I'm ending the webinar.
Bye. Have a nice night.
Thank you. Thank you. Glad you're part of us.